Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome to another round of I Could Be Wrong. Hopefully, you had a great weekend, getting ready for another great week. I'm Brad. He's Justin. How's it going, bro?
Good.
We're back. We got some topics this week. Fantasy focused. We're going to talk about Justin's top 10 wide receivers, top 10 running backs, and top 10 tight ends for fantasy football this year. We're also going to give our reaction to what was, I think, to sum it up, a hell of a week in sports. There
Yeah.
was a lot of banter, a lot of interaction between coaches,
Yeah.
players, owners. So I think that
There's a lot going on.
we got a lot to chit chat about this week. But we'll go ahead and kick it off. We'll get started with Justin's top 10 fantasy running backs for 2023.
Yeah, starting off with Christian McCaffrey, followed by Austin Eckler, prime for another big season. Then I'm going to follow that with Jonathan Taylor, who also is prime for a good year. Pollard, I have in there as my number 4, followed by Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley coming in at number 6, Nick Chubb in at number 7, followed by Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and then rounded off with Ramondre Stevenson as my top 10 training camp edition.
All right. I like it. I like it. I think there's some good names on there. Uh, I would switch up maybe the order of a couple of those myself. I love Saquon, but I think who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
See, here's the thing. Again, these are just training camp
Yeah,
edition
I get you.
rankings, but right now, and we'll talk more about this. This is pretty unfluid, unfortunately, with
Yeah,
the running back rankings. If you think about it, there's a lot going on in the running back market right now. So it's based on name, previous success, so on and so forth. But I do believe that this could change big time as the season progresses. These guys will likely play. The running backs that are disgruntled will likely play, but human emotion is still going to be a part of it. And if you got a player who's upset or disgruntled, they likely are not going to have their best performance. So you still want to really pay attention to the situation that's going on there.
yeah, I agree. I think you're right. I think unfortunately for running backs, it's not a fluid situation. I do again. I like your list. I would say I would probably put Nick Chubb a little higher, just based off of his past performance the last couple of years. But I do like the list as far as who's on the list. Derrick Henry, I would say he's in the right spot. A couple of years ago, he might be a lot higher, but I think last couple of years with injuries and things like that have really caught up with him. In Tennessee's going to have to, they're going to have to feed the beast when it comes to DeAndre Hopkins, so that's going to take away some touches from Derrick Henry as well. So, and then Stevenson from New England, I think that that's definitely a good spot for him. He could probably finish a little higher
He
because
could wind up in the top
he
5,
definitely could.
especially with Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator there in New England. He gets a lot out of those running backs.
That's what I was going to say is Bill O'Brien being there is going to make a big difference. I think it's going to help Mac Jones. I think they're going to get back to quote unquote Patriot style football, playing tough defense because they still have a very good defense and just running the ball, controlling the clock, and then having Mac Jones make a play or two here and there to keep them in the game or to close out a game. But I think that's a great spot for him. Tony Pollard, I know again it's training camp edition. We'll have to see how he looks coming off of his injury, but I think it's going to be a good season for him if he is healthy because obviously Zeke is gone and he's one of those dynamic players that can play. He can go between the tackles. He can go outside. He can contribute in the passing game. So I think that's a great spot for him as well. So
Yeah, there's 231 carries that are vacated by Ezekiel Elliott leaving. So Tony Pollard, right there in the top 5, is definitely not something that many people should look at and go, "Oh man, that's just crazy." The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of opportunities that were vacated when they let go of Zeke.
yep, I think another guy who could finish maybe in that top 10 depending on how healthy he is, because I feel like the Jets are going to lean on running the ball more than what people anticipate. I think that Brees Hall, again, if he's healthy, I think he could definitely finish in that top 10 if they don't sign Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
So,
Cook made his second appearance in the building this morning in New York, so it's looking likely they're going to sign him. But
I wouldn't have let him leave without a contract if I was the Jets either. It's just an insurance policy for what they already have, pretty
Yeah.
much. So, especially if he may be facing suspension, they don't, need him for the second half of the year, maybe.
I'm going to throw two names out there that don't have contract issues currently. One of them is definitely considered a 3-down back by their team, and the other one just signed with this team, and they have mentioned multiple times they're 3-down back. So if any running back can creep into the top 10 of this list, it's going to be running backs who are settled in, should have plenty of opportunities. First one I'm talking about is Cam Akers with the Rams, who finished very strong last year. Sony Michel announced his retirement yesterday. Wasn't likely going to take away a lot of carries from Akers anyways, but he could creep into that top 10 if he continues to produce like he did towards the end of last year. McVay says he's committed to, using Akers in that way. So he could easily creep in the top 10. And then another name would be Miles Sanders, who just signed with the Carolina Panthers this offseason. So no contract issues. Should be happy. They've said multiple times that they view him as a 3-down back. And in Philadelphia, he was used as a 3-down back in some games. But there were other situations where he wasn't quite used that way. But he still had a great fantasy season. So keep an eye on Miles Sanders as well. He could creep into that top 10.
I like it. All right, so those are our thoughts. That's Justin's top 10 running backs for fantasy football coming up. Training camp edition.
Yep.
Be on the lookout for second edition coming after the preseason gets kicked off, going into the regular season.
Yep.
In the meantime, we would love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and or read your thoughts. So go ahead and leave a comment. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And we'll be back in just a second with Justin's top 10 wide receivers for 2023. Be on the lookout for an all-new I Could Be Wrong podcast every weekend. In the meantime, scan that QR code and take a look at our existing playlist today. All right, everybody, we're back. This is take 3. I'm just going to go ahead and tell the story and spill the beans. We just recorded 25 minutes of banter without a fucking microphone being plugged in. It's all on me, my fault. So we're going to go back through it real quick at a high level, and then we'll give some more feedback throughout the week. But anyways, hey, my bad, bro. Sorry, I know you got shit to do. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and jump into Justin's top 10 fantasy wide receivers for 2023 training camp edition.
Yeah, so I like the wide receivers this year. I'm going to start with Jamar Chase, whom I think is going to get a lot of targets in a pass-heavy offense, followed by Justin Jefferson, who is who he is. Then Tyreek Hill, followed by A.J. Brown, Stefon Diggs at number 5 in a pass-heavy Bills offense, followed by Cooper Kupp. Then Devontae Adams, who should have another really good year. CeeDee Lamb at number 9. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then I am going to round out my list here with Garrett Wilson, who has his QB in Aaron Rodgers. So that's my top 10 training camp edition wide receiver ranks.
I like it. I think that it's pretty solid top 10. As we talked about it, I think that a couple of those guys could fluctuate, go up or down.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp, I could see him sliding down, as we mentioned, based off of their quarterback situation. As we were wrapping up the unrecorded version of what we just did, we saw news that Garrett Wilson had a mild injury, I think what you said. Low ankle sprain. Yeah. They said hopefully no big deal. They don't think it's going to be a big deal, so
should be good.
He should be good to go. I do, again, as I mentioned earlier this week, and we've been talking about for a while, I've been high on him for last year and going into this year. I think Brandon Ayuk, if the 49ers decide to make him a focal point, I think he has a good chance of finishing that top 10. Yep. But overall, I think it's a great list. I really like St. Brown. I think he's going to finish higher on that list.
Yeah.
I think he and Jared Goff really found some chemistry in the second half of last year. I think they're going to carry that into this year, and he's going to have a big season. So So those are Justin's top 10 fantasy wide receivers training camp edition for 2023. We would love to know what you think. Please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for our regular season edition coming up here in a couple of weeks as we get ready for real football, which, by the way, is only 4 days away.
Woo!
Yes. All right. Next up, we're going to go ahead and Justin's going to give us his top 10 tight ends for 2023 training camp edition. I think this list here is probably one that can't be argued much as far as the names that are on there. Maybe the order a little bit, but again, it's training camp edition. So
it is training camp edition.
Really can't argue with that either.
All season long edition will have Travis Kelce as number one.
Yeah, Draymond.
Unless injury, but nonetheless, he finished with over 100 points more than every tight end last year. I have him followed by Mark Andrews at 2, George Kittle at 3. Number 4, I have T.J. Hawkinson. And then at number 5, I have Eagles tight end Dallas Goedert. And then Evan Ingram at number 6, who had the best season of his career last year. At number 7, I have Pat Freiermuth going into his third full season. He should have a good year, followed by Kyle Pitts, who we're all waiting to break out, and then Darren Waller, who's a beast, and then follow that and round it out with Dalton Kincaid, rookie tight end for the Bills, whom I think could wind up in the top 3 of this list by the end of the year.
Yeah, I like it. Again, I think that's a pretty solid list. You can't really argue with who the best tight ends in the NFL are, because there's this group and then there's everybody else for the most part. So obviously I think Travis Kelce, if he can stop punching his teammates, is going to finish at the top of the list simply because he's got the best quarterback. He's got one of the best play callers, that coach who loves to get him the ball. And he's just that guy. He's a beast. So
he's the best receiver on their team.
He's the best receiver on their team. He's one of the best blockers on their team.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to finish number 1 just because of his situation and how good he is.
Yep.
I love Mark Andrews, as we were talking about earlier. I think that because of his situation and there not being as many weapons around him as there are Kittle, I think Mark Andrews could definitely finish above Kittle. I think if we were picking a team, though, not fantasy, but if we were starting a team, I think both of us would probably go with George Kittle over Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
I do like Hawkinson. I like Evan Ingram. I think he's probably going to finish higher on this list. Quarterback's just going to be a year better. Another year with Doug Peterson. So I think that's a good addition to your top 10. Yeah. Kincaid, I like what you're saying about him. I'm picking up what you're laying down about him. The other guy we were mentioning, you called out, was Kyle Pitts. As we talked about, I think that he reminds me a lot of Vernon Davis as far as the way his career started. Very talented, shows flashes. Some games he seems unguardable, and then other games it seems like he's just nowhere to be found. So again, as you mentioned, and maybe you'll touch on it a little bit, Atlanta's youth movement is almost complete as far as their skill position players go. Everybody's kind of getting used to each other, so hopefully that'll help him out, and we can see the Kyle Pitts that we've been waiting to see. So I like your list overall as far as tight ends go, for sure. What do you guys think? What do you think about Justin's tight end list? Go ahead and leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, share it with your favorite team on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, and let us know. X. Des Bryant, he's so happy, I bet. So there you have it. You have Justin's top 10 wide receivers, top 10 running backs, top 10 tight ends, training camp edition for fantasy football. As I mentioned, be on the lookout for regular season editions as we get closer to the regular season, which again is very close, thank goodness. And we're going to wrap it up with just a real quick recap of a wild week in sports in general. Starting off with Sean Payton.
Yeah.
Being a savage and forgetting that he's not in the media anymore and roasting Nathaniel Hackett. Kudos to you, Sean Payton.
It was a roast.
I love it.
And it was a well-done roast.
It was. I know there was a lot of pushback as far as some people thought maybe he shouldn't have done that. And, if you're part of a coaching fraternity, maybe you shouldn't do that, right? At the same time, he just said what all of us and everybody on TV have been saying since about week 6 of last year.
Yeah.
Nathaniel Hackett should have never been the head coach of the Broncos because they were a dumpster fire last year. Let's just call it what it is. So he just happened to say it out loud in front of a camera when he probably shouldn't have.
Right. Couple of big sports contracts came out this week. In the NBA, you got Jaylen Brown getting the richest contract ever.
$300 million.
In the NFL, you've got Justin Herbert getting $40 million
a year.
So
for no playoff wins.
For comparison, I think one deserves it more than the other, no doubt.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think Jaylen Brown has probably earned his contract a little more than Justin Herbert, as I mentioned. I know Justin Herbert's still young.
Yeah.
What's he going to his fourth year, fifth year, something like that?
Yeah.
Fourth year. So, he hasn't had a ton of, I guess, what would I say? I don't know what word I would use. Not a lot to go off of. Not a huge sample size, but 3 years is enough to say you got to, for $40 million a year, I'd be expecting more than 0 playoff wins and 500 record for the most part every year. So I think that, could he earn it? Absolutely, he has the potential to. He's a very talented young man, but he's got to get some W's, in my opinion. As far as Jaylen Brown goes, congratulations to you, man. $306 million. I think you've earned every penny of it. Team has been to the conference finals almost every single year of your career, and you've had a huge part in every one of those playoff runs. So it's not like he was. What did Jeff Teague say? He got an A on the group project when they won the championship. When he won the championship with the Nuggets, Jaylen Brown hasn't been getting the A on the group project. He's been contributing to the A on the group project. So he definitely earned it. As I mentioned, I think what's interesting is, in my opinion, the greatest basketball player ever, Michael Jordan, earned approximately $94 million over his entire career playing basketball. Obviously, he earned way more off the court. But playing basketball, he earned about $94 million. Jaylen Brown's going to make $69 million in just one season in the last year of his contract. So just insane money out there right now.
Yes,
My
sir.
son is going to be out in the driveway when it cools off working on his jump shot immediately. Or he's going to work on playing soccer because Mbappe got offered almost $1 billion to go play, and he turned it down.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's crazy.
What was the other thing we were touching on? Oh, Justin Gaethje. Woo! Kudos to you, man.
Yeah.
One of the best knockouts I've seen in quite a while.
It was beautiful.
Yep. Hell of a finish to a hell of a card, and you deserve that BMF belt. Again, thank you for capping off the night with one of the most spectacular knockouts we've seen in quite a while.
Congratulations on that.
Absolutely. Hell of a win. And then you had some early training camp notes?
Yeah, I do actually. For our fantasy viewers, I've got some early training camp notes for our rookies, incoming rookie class. I'm going to start with wide receiver Jalen Hyatt for the Giants. Notes are he's receiving a lot of reps with the first team on a team really where they don't have a bona fide wide receiver one. So him stepping up into that role is a very real possibility. He's been running crisp routes, catching the ball with both hands by getting good grip on it. This is a guy who last year in college had over 1,200 receiving yards for Tennessee and was tied for second in the nation with 15 receiving touchdowns. So those are some notable stats for a guy who could be primed for a breakout year. And again, the Giants, regardless of what anyone thinks, the Giants do want to throw the ball. They don't have the best receiving core, so this could be a great addition to your fantasy team.
High volume.
He could see a lot of opportunities early. Because let's think about this. Dable, their coach, is from the Bills, Sean McDermott coaching tree, and those guys throw the ball a lot. So look for Daniel Jones and the Bills, or not the Bills, the Giants, to want to throw the ball a lot more this year if Hyatt can improve their receiving core, which it looks like he has.
I'll add one other thing to that. So, when you think about college players and they're like, oh, this guy had this many yards and this many touchdowns, a lot of times you can take it with a grain of salt. But I know it's not the pros, but Tennessee is in the SEC, which is as close as you can get to playing pro defenses on a weekly basis in college football. And he went out there and dominated against a lot of them.
He scored 5 touchdowns against Georgia.
Yeah, so that lets you know right there that he's really solid. He's a go-getter, and he's someone that you should probably keep your eye on in maybe one of the later rounds, because obviously he's not going to be picked in the first or second round, but maybe keep your eye out for him in the later rounds. But yeah, I just wanted to add that there. It's not like he was playing cupcake teams every week in college.
No, he was not. Definitely not. Dalton Kincaid, tight end. I talked about him earlier, how I thought he could, by the end of the year, wind up as a top 3 fantasy tight end. Um, Even before he was drafted, analysts were saying, comparing him, his route running to Travis Kelce in his hands, and it's shown he's getting almost every play is the report. That's the quote. He's running with the first team. He's on the field for every play. He's been making big plays, and he's considered one of the favorite targets of Josh Allen already. So we know Diggs is going to get his, but outside of that, the Bills haven't had that second playmaker that they thought maybe Gabe Davis was going to be. Dawson Knox, he's a good tight end, but he's not the receiving threat that Kincaid's going to give them. So again, in a pass-heavy offense, watch Kincaid in your drafts. You could probably get him as a steal. And then the last guy I wanted to bring up was running back Kenny McIntosh for the Seattle Seahawks. Not to say draft him, really to say fade those Seattle running backs, because if he continues to get opportunities with the first team like he has been in training camp and showing out, I mean, he made some big plays in a crowded backfield where they just drafted Zach Charbonnet also this year in the second round. Last year they drafted Kenneth Walker, everyone's, quote, fantasy darling going into this season. It's such a crowded backfield. If these guys are all taking advantage of their opportunities, Pete Carroll's going to have no other choice but to make sure they're all getting in rotation, and that's the worst thing for a fantasy football owner, is to have a running back by committee.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely not what. If you're building a team to play on the field, absolutely, right. You want a stacked backfield. You want a stacked room in every room.
Yes.
But when you're talking about fantasy football, you need those guys that stand out and and really produce head and shoulders above everybody else. And I agree with you. I think Seattle's going to get just running back by committee production, which is great for them.
Yeah.
But for your fantasy team, I agree, it's not what you're looking for. So, anyways, that's what we got. We would love to know what you think. What did we leave out? What did we forget to talk about this week? Go ahead and leave a comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. Be on the lookout for more content throughout the week. Don't forget to visit our website, ICouldBeWrongSports.com. And we'll see you guys next week with another round of I Could Be Wrong. Thanks for watching. Last message. Try to be good at being a good person, even to Cowboys fans. Be on the lookout for an all-new I Could Be Wrong podcast every weekend. In the meantime, scan that QR code and take a look at our existing playlist today.